Oh, I guess I should start out this recording. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us for the town hall tonight. I'm Kira. I am the president, and only recently so. I'm very excited to grow into the role. And we have some of our other directors with us as well. We have Elle, our vice president, and we have just now Janine's joining us. She's our secretary. And we also have Evan and Maggie and PJ and our executive director, Christy, with us. And we would all like to thank you for joining us and for being continually involved in our community. And with that in mind, we want to share our PowerPoint slides or Google slides that we have prepared for the night. And so our agenda for the night, we already did the welcome part, so we got that out of the way. And then we'll acknowledge the land that I think probably most of us are on. Maybe some of us are not in the Pittsburgh area at the moment. Acknowledge redlining in our community, talk about our community expectations. Then we'll do some breakout rooms, review the state of Ultimate, talk about the protocol that we have settled on, do a little bit more breakout rooms, and a share back. That's what we have planned for the evening. And I already introduced the directors that are here with us at the moment. So we are ready to acknowledge the land that we're on. And acknowledging native lands shows recognition of and respect for Indigenous peoples and the ways of life and begins to shine a light on histories untold. So I want to acknowledge the fact that we are gathered on unceded Indigenous land, the traditional territory of the Shawnee and the Osage peoples who stewarded this land for generations. And these histories often tell of the theft and colonization of Native resources carried out by broken promises. And if you want to find out what Native land other areas are on, there's a link in the slide. And doing so can be the first step in considering your own place in the story of colonization and helping you find your role in the undoing of its legacy. And the link is also in the chat for you, if that's easier. We would also like to acknowledge the impact of racist systemic oppression of redlining on the lives of the Black community in the Pittsburgh area. So redlining being the refusal of a loan or insurance to someone because of the area they lived in, deemed to be a poor financial risk. And this directly impacts the lives of the Black community here and elsewhere. And we have a link for more information on that as well. Okay, and so for our community expectations, we want to recognize historically and typically marginalized voices and make space for those voices. We want to monitor space and speak as ourselves, not for other people. If we are going to state opinions, we'll state them as opinions. And we will assume good intent and acknowledge impact. We'll hold ourselves accountable. We'll value the differences that others have. We'll create space and maintain it. And we will we'll be intentional about nonverbal responses, facial responses, things like this. And we will ask if we are being understood and if we are understanding correctly or for more context when we need it. And if you're interested in looking at more community expectations, we have those as well.
We asked folks to take a look at that document as an attempt to make sure that we are prioritizing voices that we haven't in the past and to make sure that the space that we're in tonight, as well as spaces moving forward, are safe and a place where people can feel free to express themselves honestly and genuinely and without fear, and so that we all assume that we're all on the same page so that we can create that space.
All right, and so take a look at what we're going to be asking you in the breakout rooms in just a moment.
Awesome. I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to go through some of the updates for Ultimate in across the country, across the state, and then in Pittsburgh. If y'all could send your questions while I speak to Kira, then Kira can gracefully what's the word I'm looking for? Interrupt me and ask us the questions. because I won't be able to look at the screen. Okay. Here we go. Whoa, that's not the button that I wanted. Present. Okay, great. Okay, so I feel lucky that I am part of a pretty big network of ultimate organizers, and both in the city, in the state, and in the US. So I tried to collect some of the most pertinent things that I felt like people would ask about in this meeting about what else is going on in the rest of the ultimate world. So feel free to ask other questions. Some things I will know additional information about. And Kira, there are some things in the notes that I can't read from this view. So if anyone asks a question, you might have access to that. But just a few notes. Someone was looking at the USA Ultimate website and realized that there are only 4 states right now that had spring state championships, which I guess just felt very telling that we were sort of making, I guess it felt affirming that we had made our decision that way. The closest state to us that is being Virginia, and then the other ones being pretty far away, Missouri, Minnesota, and Colorado. Colorado is one of the few states that has had programming almost the entire pandemic. So they've always been sort of an outlier. We did get a bigger list of teams that are not, or cities that are not sending teams to the Youth Club Championships. That's what the YCC is. And a lot of them are East Coast, even though there are West Coast teams as well. So in addition to the cities that are named, Philly and Triangle area, which is in North Carolina, there are a lot of areas that are not sending teams this year. And that's in Blaine, Minnesota. So USA Ultimate is hosting that event, and they are encouraging teams to come, while at the same time giving out information about why travel is risky right now. So it is a little confusing on an organizer side as to why that tournament is still happening and why they're still encouraging teams to go. But we do know that it will be much, much smaller than in years past. A lot of people have been asking questions about vaccinations and if there are vaccination required leagues or tournaments or opportunities this summer. And the best information that I've talked to so far is suggesting that people do not do that for legal reasons. And with a side note that race and class has been very seriously affecting certain cities with regards to vaccination accessibility. So those are 2 pretty good reasons, I would say, to not have leagues that require those. And this New Northwest is out of Seattle and Buda is out of Boston. And then another area that's close to us is WAFC, which is the Washington Area Frisbee Club in DC. And they have decided to have youth programming this summer, but no adult programming until the fall. So those are all pretty comparable organizations to us, and I thought pretty useful information. Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to just drop that in the chat. The next thing I want to do is just kind of run through the PA list of current offerings, and I just spoke in the last few days with the organizers in these areas. I did not hear back in time from Harrisburg or State College area, but Philly had a pretty similar schedule to us, and we've been sort of pairing off them the whole last year and a half. We've been kind of watching pandemic shifts hit Erie and then Pittsburgh and then Philly. So we're all kind of like watching each other, knowing full well that we're all very different with regard to rates and everything, basically. But Philly's had a very gradual return to play. They sort of put together a big plan that they would start with disc golf. They actually installed their own disc golf course at their field complex, which is pretty wild. And then they moved to DDC leagues, I think even a couple of seasons ago, and then they moved up into 4s. And all of those things kind of got canceled or postponed at different points, but their goal was to return to 7s by the summer. So they are planning to return to 7s with some protocol in place. They decided not to go to the Youth Club Championships, and their sort of co-partner Devil, which is the Delaware Valley Youth Ultimate League, that's New Jersey, Philly area combined. They also decided not to go to the Youth Club Championships this summer. Erie's a little different than us, but generally speaking, they're more of a pickup town. They're definitely more of a beach ultimate town. And they have been running pickups on and off, mostly with vaccinated people, mostly with masks, and mostly just with friend groups. But they are trying to run a beach league this spring, and they just said that their numbers are tough. So they'll see if it happens. And they do have some protocol in place, but I believe it's mask encouraged, not mask required. And then they do plan to announce registration for their yearly beach tournament, which is Don't Give Up the Disc, for July 10th and 11th, but they are limiting the number of teams. Lehigh Valley is out in Allentown, which is like almost all the way to Philly, for those of you who aren't as familiar with that area, but they are a much, much smaller organization than both us and the Philadelphia Area Disc Alliance, but they are combining their two leagues into one based on interest. And they said that they're being very strict about mask wearing, social distancing on sidelines and things like that, as well as sanitization and establishing, they didn't call it a COVID captain, but basically a COVID person for each team to be the ones who's contact tracing and distributing information. Kira, any questions? Cool. And that's just
Christy sorry, I showed up late. Did you start with what Pittsburgh's plan is, or are you going to do that at the end?
It's going to happen right now.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I figured I'd shrink, close in on us. So this spring, I know things have been coming out pieces at a time, and it's kind of hard to see the whole picture. But basically the decision for the spring was decided a long time ago that everything that we would do would be distanced and or virtual. And we know that disc golf, workouts, double disc court, those are all things that can be outdoors and distanced, still mask required, but feeling much, much, much more safe. So that has been our spring plan. And it basically feels like the spring is over already. So it's unsure if we're in spring or summer right now, but the summer programming that we have announced for youth has all, I don't know if it's strategically planned that way, but the general plan is to have everything be set up so that it can be pretty safe with regards to distance. That doesn't mean there won't be any matchup defense or anything, but it will all be mask required and distance on the sidelines and things like that. But it'll all be, none of it will be play based formally. There'll be our pretty traditional day camps, youth ages 7 to 14, Monday through Friday sort of camps. We'll be doing some higher level skills camps for ages 12 to 19, which will hopefully replace some of our higher level coach training that we're used to, such as the Elite Ultimate Academy that we're not hosting this summer, and our youth club teams, which are not functioning this summer. And then we're actually also offering some optional training by pit players for teams or one-on-one or one-on-two, etc., for folks that really want additional attention. So we're not attending the youth club championships, but we are hoping to make sure that our youth players are getting opportunities to do all the things that they get from YCCs, which is, high level coaching, strong one-on-one attention, exercise, friendships, all of the mental health pieces to sports. And then our updates for the summer for adults are all dependent on metrics, which are going to be in the next slide. And they all will have protocol, which we can share on our screen or someone can drop in the chat, I believe, now.
And also we had a question, is additional training available for adults?
That's a great question. We have not discussed that. I have only spoken with the pit contingent about doing it with the youth. If coaches are available, I don't see why they wouldn't be willing to do that. There's a interest form out there for the youth right now. If you're an adult and you are interested, then shoot us an email and we'll talk to the coaches. The only training right now that we're offering for adults are 3 return to play clinics, one of which might be happening tomorrow, depending on the weather. And then the next 2 Mondays, which came from some requests from anecdotal conversation, basically about adults being concerned about returning back to recreational leagues without prepping their bodies. So we partnered with both the Allegheny Health Network to put out, preparatory training materials, as well as with Donald Robinson of Global Human Performance to host these 3 basically training camps for adults to remember how to stop and turn, jump and land, and get back into cardio shape. So if you can attend those, that would be great. And those are free with membership. So we feel like that's very, very important. So the other adult programming for summer, we wanted to mimic as closely as possible to traditional programs, meaning summer draft league and summer casual league. So we are planning to host those. They are dependent on the metrics, and they will be with additional protocol around masks and sideline distancings and spectators, things like that. We are waiting for survey results about Mars, which should be coming in. We're going to close that survey in the next couple of days, so we'll be assessing that probably next week. We may host the Bridge on the River Mon tournament, which has been traditionally a men's club tournament in June, based on the club teams and their comfort levels. And then we may be able to consider something like the Adult Club Hat Tournament, which has been a mixed casual tournament for the past few years. Kira, do you want to speak to these metrics?
Yes, I do. And if someone could put in the chat the CPU board email address, that would be great. Okay, so I would love to speak about the metrics that we'll be using for the summer. And so the metrics that we decided on are that we'll be using the positive test rate as the metric that we're keeping an eye on. And if that is at 3% or below for the 14 days leading up to the first day of programming, then we will start the programming, and we will continue programming as long as it stays below 5%. And so the way that we got to that metric is on our next slide. And it is actually the metric that Triangle Ultimate originally proposed for their spring programming, and their return to play committee is composed of doctors and nurses and immunologists and health researchers and people who know a lot about all of these things, which is why we decided that we should use the information from experts. Also, the World Health Organization suggests that if you're at 5% or low positivity rate, that's when you can be confident that community spread is reasonably low. So we felt like that was a model that we could mimic. And just as an update, as of yesterday, if you look at the Allegheny County Health Department website, it tells you the 7-day moving average of the current 7-day period and then the previous 7-day period. And so as of yesterday, the 7-day moving average was 5.7%, and the previous 7-day average was 6.2%, which is good that it's going down, and hopefully we're able to continue in that direction. Also, I checked right before the meeting where we're at in terms of vaccination rate, just because that's going to help us get to less COVID cases. And in the Pittsburgh metro area, 34.8% of adults are fully vaccinated, and 50.5% of adults are have at least one shot. So if COVID numbers go down, positivity numbers go down, that is going to be great for us in our ability to play. And then there's some additional protocol that we agreed upon for the summer programming that involves symptom checks. If anyone is having COVID symptoms, we ask them to stay home until they feel better. Masks will be required. And then also some social distancing, like teams being on opposite sidelines, standing at least 6 feet apart. The full details are available on our website. And also, we just wanted to note that we know that CDC guidelines and state regulations are changing very rapidly. We're keeping an eye on those things. Our goal is to stay abreast of that and to address whatever the current policies are, adapt them to the new guidelines and regulations. So whenever those change and then we change in response, then we will update you on where we land. Okay, and so then we also just wanted to address some of the questions we had in mind when we were trying to come up with when it's appropriate to return to play. And so some of the things that come up in those kinds of discussions are, do local and state health regulations that allow us to return to play mean that we should return to play, and why or why not? And how do we communicate that to all of the communities that are involved in our community? What is our collective responsibility, not only for our community, also to the communities in which we live, the communities in which we work, the communities in which we have other interactions with? If we do return to play, how does that affect the broader non-ultimate playing community? Does that affect the risk of spreading or contracting the virus? Some other questions that we had are, how will returning to play guidelines and strategies negatively affect already marginalized groups? Is this going to further homogenize the ultimate playing community? If we are prioritizing equity in our return to play timelines, does that mean that we intentionally wait longer to return to play? Does that mean that there will be direct impacts of that decision in terms of financial impacts, community impacts, all sorts of other things? And what are the financial implications of waiting longer to return to play? How do we consider our organization's financial stability when prioritizing equity in our return to play? And then also, how do we authentically back up equity efforts with high-level organizational strategy? How do we message that to our community? So there's a lot involved with trying to decide what is the right strategy and way to communicate that in returning to play. Okay, so we're going to have another opportunity to discuss some things in breakout rooms before we get into our question and answer portion. So the questions that we're encouraging you to discuss in the breakout rooms are, do you feel safe practicing or playing right now? Are you experiencing barriers to participation, or do you know others who are? Do you plan to participate in team-based leagues during the summer? Is there any specific or general support that your team would need to play in the summer, and anything tangentially related to these questions?
We're back. Awesome. So we're going to share back. We don't want anyone to identify other people, or but I feel if anyone feels comfortable sort of either summarizing or sort of sharing general vibes, or you can speak as yourself and share just to see what the different vibes from the different rooms were. Or is a board member, if no one else wants to speak, a board member will speak from your room.
Yeah, I guess I can go first. In our room, I think a big point of discussion was obviously wearing masks, but specifically while playing. So I think in general, everyone in our room was ready and willing to play and go outside and play, and willing to space out on the sidelines and wear a mask on the sidelines. But the big question came, whether we're out of shape or get very sweaty, or don't have a right kind of mask, or don't know the appropriate kind of mask to wear. That when it gets really wet, it's kind of just hard to breathe through. So I think one of our biggest questions was kind of what you guys think that's going to be like, and then also the maybe people feeling uncomfortable about if we are playing unmasked, having someone up in your face marking you. So maybe there could be some augmented rules about marking, or something along those lines.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Does anyone else from that room want to add? Or we can move to the next one. Elle, was that your room? Okay, Elle, do you want to speak for the next one?
Sure, yeah. So I'm like super grateful for the breadth of examples that we had. One of our participants has been in some ultimate programming, and so that on the youth scale, so they got to share about what their experience has been in kind of playing ultimate while during COVID. And I think one of the questions that came out of our breakout room was kind of, how is correct mask wearing being enforced? And there was a mix of sentiment as well, in terms of like, how comfortable am I, playing Ultimate masked or unmasked? And I wasn't ready to like share out. Sorry. I was totally expecting someone else to do that. What am I missing, folks? I feel there was one other thing I actually wanted to write down in my notes that I was like, oh, that's an important thing to think of. What great thing did someone say that I didn't say?
I think the biggest question we had at the end was, with the state guidance that 70% the mask mandate will go away, what will Pittsburgh Ultimate do if and when the state reaches that point? That was the last thing that came up, and we were open and honest that if we get to that point, we will have to have that discussion, and that no decision has been made on that yet. But that's 3 days old.
I did a lot of reading yesterday on what the expectation is for herd immunity, and I'll do bad news, good news. Bad news is that based on polling numbers, America might not get to herd immunity. But the good news is that we're at least probably going to be at a point where the people that are most vulnerable are protected. But like Evan said, when we get to that point, which is still a ways away, then it will absolutely involve a lot more research on our part and discussion to figure out exactly what that means for everything.
So to Evan's point there about the 70% vaccination that Wolf came out with, I guess, a couple days ago, that was purely for the restrictions, but it kept the mask mandate, right?
No. So as of Memorial Day, Pennsylvania will no longer require any mitigation except for masks. So things like capacity and bar, and so then the 70% fully vaccinated is when masks will no longer be mandated, but that would be a statewide mandate that would be lifted. And so, local organizations and businesses might make their own rules about those things.
Oh, okay. So sorry. So I guess I misheard. I thought it was if by Memorial Day 70% was reached. They're two separate metrics.
Yeah, separate.
Okay. Thanks, Kira.
Yep.
Taha, do you want to share from our room?
Sure, I can share. So from our group, our biggest concern was how comfortable we felt about coming back to play in general. We had a different kind of how do we feel versus how we might impact someone else who might not be vaccinated. Our room seemed mostly on board for getting vaccinated themselves, or were at a point where they were close to being fully vaccinated, but that impact was still going to have further impacts on other people that they may see or they may interact with. So that was one of the big things. The other thing we also got kind of questions about was the masks themselves. What were acceptable masks? How do you enforce the masks? What's the thought process there? And we kind of came to the conclusion that Pittsburgh Ultimate is going to, take this thing of accountability, where if you sign up for the league, you're accepting the fact that you're going to follow the rules of the league. So if the rules say that you should wear a mask, hopefully that happens. Otherwise, you almost kind of force a captain to tell you to wear a mask, or maybe even go home if they refuse. But the room was of the mindset that if you join the league and you accept the rules, you will follow the rules, hopefully.
Yeah, and we talked a bit through the actual mask things, and since we had two rooms who talked a lot about that, I figured I can reshare. We talked a bit about masks in the before arriving piece of our protocol, which does make it clear which kind of mask we aka the CDC think are good enough, quote. So it does list the types, and it says, if you are not sure, please click here to see which masks are effective. So hopefully everyone will have access to the I mean, everyone in our leagues will have access to what we deem effective for these leagues. And it specifically says that bandanas, gaiters, and other loose face coverings will not be allowed. And it also, it's kind of a dense document, so I understand if everyone hasn't gotten a chance to read it or read it thoroughly, but it does go into detail about, you know, what we expect when folks get there. Sort of like it's not like a packing list, but it's, in my head, feels like a packing list of like, this is the stuff you need to make sure you have prepared. And the goal will be that folks will bring a second mask in case it does get wet or sweaty or dirty or whatever. We are going to be giving some extra masks and hand sanitizer to captains so that it should be at the site every time. So, you know, if there's somebody who shows up without a mask, whether it's by accident or not, or an ineffective mask, we want our leaders to feel empowered and being able to say like, hey, here are the rules. Here are the masks they gave us. You know, like ideally our leaders will feel comfortable just walking up and saying, here's a mask. This is the rule. Like my job is to give you this mask. But at the same time, we know that, you know, especially like our leaders in the community, you know, our captains, we don't want to put them in a situation where they have to be the bad person. We don't want them to like be in an uncomfortable, like, you know, people like our summer league captains are people that we hold near and dear to our hearts. And we definitely don't want to put them out more than we need to. So we are relying a lot on an honor system, and hopefully like the empathy will come from the fact that like no one wants to be that person that like sends their league teammate home because they're refusing to wear a mask. So, you know, if you sign up for a league with a mask, we're hoping you have one. And if you accidentally forget, everybody I think can empathize with that already. And also we will have extras. So I think the general ideas we'll try to make, you know, more like casual, like bring a mask, bring an extra mask, bring a mask for a friend if you're willing, right? Like bring stuff. But the doc, if you do still have questions, I urge you to really go through it, because we pieced it together from some documents from a few different major DISC organizations across the country. And we feel like it's pretty thorough and also very fair. Taha?
Okay, I do have a question this time. It's raised for a reason. I wanted to ask about the percentages that we're going to follow, the 7-day and the previous 7-day. Is there also a certain number that we're thinking about? I'm just thinking like as more people get vaccinated, the people that are going to get tests are, you know, they're skewing the percentages because they're less likely to be vaccinated, right? Is there a percentage and a number that we're going to look at, or just the percentage? Because I feel like a percentage could be a false statistics.
Right. So for now, it's just the positivity percentage. But if that does end up being the case, that it's starting to get skewed because the amount of people that are vaccinated are affecting the amount of people that are getting tested, then we would readdress that. But when we were looking at all of the different possible metrics that you could use, basically, there is no perfect metric. There's a pro and a con for any of the possible metrics you could look at. And that one seemed to be pretty reasonably reliable, and then also is the one that's being recommended by the World Health Organization. So we wanted to start with that. We also at some point discussed having like way too many metrics, like if this, then that, then also that, but maybe also this one. And that seemed like that was not going to be helpful for people to be able to check and keep up to date with it on their own time. And so we decided, okay, we'll go with the one recommended by the World Health Organization that's also very visible on the Allegheny County Health Department website. That way people can check any time of any day that they want to know where are we at right in this moment, and be able to get a sense of, are we heading in a direction where this programming is going to happen? Are we like having some weird spike in the summer? But that if it does seem like it's starting to get skewed because of the things you mentioned, then we would absolutely readdress.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a lot to think about, and Kira has definitely led the charge with all the metrics and research and chasing down this stuff. So props to her, because I could not have done that. And I assume she's continually available to answer those questions if you need to email her. Does anyone have any specific questions also about the protocol or the metrics? Because this is the last section of our evening. So, and then we want you all to do a personal checkout. We just want you to sort of check in with yourself and see, how you're feeling, and if you feel like this was useful for you, and if you still have more questions, you can always email the board after this. We also have a feedback box on the website always. So we're always looking to hear from folks, and whether that's anecdotal or stats, or we always want to have the best pulse we can on the community. So if you have any other questions, the board members will stick around for the next maybe 10-15 minutes. Otherwise, we'll end our formal meeting for the night.
And I just copied and pasted the email that goes to all of the directors into the chat, but also on the website, it has all of the directors listed and our individual emails. If you want to email, all of the options are good options.
Cool. Thanks for putting this all together, everyone. This is good info.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Adios.
If everyone could just kind of, share out with your community what you experienced, what you talked about here, any resources we've shared, please share it out to everyone as much as you can. The hearing from our friends is always a lot better than kind of getting just a general email blast. So yeah, thanks.
Sid, do you have a question?
Yeah, is there a recording going to be posted somewhere?
Yeah, the plan is to post this along with the slide deck.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Sure.
So to Evan's earlier point about kind of we don't know until we get there. Whatever rules, so let's say we do a summer league, we get to the point and we start a summer league. Obviously things are going to change at some metric, whether good or bad, throughout the summer. Those whatever rules we start with, they're subject to change, I'm guessing, right? So we could start with masks, and then something really, really good magical happens and we could go to no masks, or I'm just spitballing, but something like that.
Yeah, as is the just general nature in the state of COVID, change occurs frequently, and it would be amazing if some magic happens, but we're mentally prepared for things to not be magical.
Yeah, we've sort of taken on the mental health vibe that we've learned over the last year and a half, which is, if something improves, then I don't think anyone's going to hesitate to be like, the world has improved, I'm throwing a tournament. But at the same time, we don't want people sitting around thinking something's going to happen and signing up and then canceling, and then and we finally feel like we're at the stage where we're confident enough to be like, we're going to try, and we're still not sure, but we're going to try. Whereas in past seasons, we've been like, we do not feel confident enough that this is going to fly. So, that's why this is a little different for us and the community, because we're registering.
Yeah, and the goal throughout has been to follow the guidelines put out by the CDC, follow the guidelines put out by the Allegheny County Health Department, and just really do our very best to understand the information that's being shared by public health professionals, because that is the most likely way to keep our community safe and healthy.
Yeah, so if I could just offer a suggestion, I would say if I noticed that the summer draft league registration was open already, right? But the Christy didn't broadcast it on all the channels that she normally broadcasts her stuff on. But if you guys want to go ahead and do that, marketing ploy, just say these are the rules. This is what we're going to start with, and just put your foot down and say this is how we're going to do it, right? Don't do the we're going to register and see how it goes, and also don't do that other thing that Christy said, that well, we're not sure if it's going to happen, but register just in case, right? Just like put your foot down, say, this is what we're planning, and we're going to move forward from this, and just have a very positive attitude going forward. And if something bad happens, it's going to happen, right?
Right, yeah, so that was why we wanted to have a metric that was very easily accessible online, that people wouldn't need to keep checking with us as to where we're at with it. So that way people can feel empowered to stay on top of those things on their individual timelines.
Yeah, and I applaud you guys for, I do like the document that you guys put together. Like I obviously read through that before coming here. So, I do applaud you guys for the work you have doing.
Yeah, we're excited. It's just it's a tough time to be confidently excited, So yeah, we sent out a big summer email yesterday that basically had everything. The summer draft league registration is the one thing that's pending, and that's mostly because of fields, not anything about COVID. So yeah, so everything's out, and again, a lot of our programs are structured so that they're not subject to the metrics, right? Like any double Discord or return to play sessions or whatever, like we can do them. We're gonna do them, unless it rains too much, we're gonna do them. But yeah, we're gonna move forward, and we are excited. But I will say that we are definitely not an organization that's excited to collect a lot of registrations and then have to return them. It is logistically a nightmare. So we certainly wouldn't operate in that direction.
We did that once before and it was difficult.
Yeah, that's fair.
Any other questions?
Can I ask one?
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about like return to play. I was wondering more on like a selfish note as a for community integration. Has there been any discussions in terms of non-play opportunities? For example, like a community-wide picnic, just like something akin to like our social hours pre-pandemic. Like at what point will that be okay to start planning for committees?
Yeah, that is a great question that we haven't talked too much in detail about, but we just in general have talked about events that get people together, and if it's sufficiently distanced and it's an activity in which people are able to wear masks, so like no bubble blowing competitions or something like that, but something that's masked and distanced is within the realm of possibilities for sure.
Don't even think about bubbles, Svetlana.
Dang it, that was my next question. But cool, that sounds good. All right, thanks. We have something to talk about now at the committee.
Yeah, I think if it matches sort of the idea of like a DDC event or a workout event, right, then it's pretty synonymous.
Sorry, and one more question. This is more of a logistics, and I apologize if I missed it in reading the league stuff. But do you foresee sending an email out every week and being like, okay, we're in the clear, we're going forth with this, or are you only gonna send it at a specific time ahead, kind of like a rain date, or saying, okay, we're not going forth today because it's above 5% or something like that?
We are probably not going to send frequent emails about it. We haven't discussed exactly within what time frame we would give an update, but I mean, certainly given the metrics that we've settled on, if, for example, there's a COVID spike and the positivity rate is at, say, 6%, and it's only 8 days before programming was going to start, then that would be a time that we would email and say, oh, well, we are currently not meeting the metrics that we've agreed upon. But one of the things that we've been trying to avoid throughout the pandemic is this kind of yellow lighting, giving people false hope is something that we've been trying to avoid. And so that was another reason that we really wanted to make it a metric that people could check if they wanted to check, but not, continually force someone to be reminded about if they're trying to take a step back from that.
Cool, thanks.
Anyone else? All right.